It was a match long awaited by the Dragon Ball community since the inception of the Tournament of Power, as at long last, the legendary assassin of Universe 6 collides with the ultimate Universe 11 Pride Trooper, as for the first time we bear witness to Hit battle against Jiren, all while Frieza lends an unexpected hand to Goku and aiding him following his battle against Jiren. But the question on everyone's mind is, did Hit expose any weakness that can favor Goku in their future rematch, and doing any significant damage that would later on place Jiren at a complete disadvantage? Or simply put, just as the battle with Goku, did Jiren simply annihilate Hit and there being no competition between the two? What is going on, Dragon Ball fans? Welcome to my Dragon Ball Super episode 111 breakdown review entitled The Surreal Battle Begins, Hit versus Jiren, leading into next week's exciting episode of Dragon Ball Super episode 112 entitled Vegeta's Resolve, as we get an inside first look as to what's going to be going down in next week's episode. And again, if you guys are new to this channel, I highly encourage you guys to go on ahead and punch that subscribe button and enable all notifications. That way you guys can be notified whenever a Dragon Ball video is posted onto this channel, in conjunction to news, information, updates, and spoilers. Hashtag notification squad as we head into Dragon Ball Super episode 112, that being Vegeta's Resolve. And we get to see, based on the overall preview, in which I will cover in my overall preview breakdown, but we get to see how Kaba is seemingly enough in trouble as he collides with some of the Universe 3 warriors. But by the end of it, we also get to see how Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta is taking initiative in saving Kaba. But also by the end of the preview, we get to see how Vegeta is being harsh on Kaba by kicking him in the gut, by pretty much doing the exact same thing he did during the Champa arc, and that's being aggressive towards Kaba as a whole, as a character, because Kaba is a Saiyan and he's supposed to conduct himself like one, as according to Vegeta. So it looks like that Kaba isn't doing that good of a job to where even Vegeta has to put his foot down in asserting dominance, which again, we're gonna have to wait and see what happens here, because as another fighter from another universe, why would you even have any intention on saving anyone that you know is an enemy? So maybe it's because of Vegeta's pride. He's willing to not give Goku energy, but he's willing to save Kaba, an opposing member, as seen what Kaba did during the Champa arc. Are you really trying to take that risk in keeping this kid around, even after knowing that he could also improve due to the idea that he's also a Saiyan? So lots of things happening during the overall preview, which I will discuss in another video. But going into Dragon Ball Super episode 111, which was a phenomenal episode, however, it did have certain flaws in which I will touch up on during this video. The first thing I do want to mention is Jiren does eliminate Hit, and that was a huge problem of mine, because for the span of only 26 minutes, we only got to see Hit do so much against one character, as many people, including myself, were expecting to witness Vegeta versus Hit, or possibly Hit versus Frieza, Hit versus Toppo, and it looks like for those particular fights, we may never get those battles ever again, due to the idea that Jiren has now officially eliminated Hit. But during their back and forth struggle, there was nothing that Hit could have done to prevent his loss from happening, even while using time skip, even while using cross dimensions, even while using a paralyzing attack, in which Hit thought to himself that that could have been it and that could have been over, in which even the gods themselves were very impressed by seeing what Hit was capable of in momentarily neutralizing his target. And I will say, early on, Hit was the one that took initiative and tried to attack Jiren, and despite everything else, the fandom originally thought that Jiren was going to die, that Jiren was somehow going to lose based on Hit having to kill him. Actually, the opposite happened. Now, we got to see how Hit was getting struck on purpose and trying to figure out how Jiren maneuvers and how he actually conducts himself as a fighter. And throughout the entire course of this fight, Jiren took initiative, and he wasn't even trying, essentially enough, because every single time Hit used time skip, you know, we saw similar to what Goku did back on Earth when Hit first arrived. We saw how he was able to outmaneuver that. So time skip had no effect, because every single time that Hit was going to use time skip on Jiren, Jiren countered by beating him down. However, when it came down to cross dimensions, there was one moment in particular where I truly enjoyed, where Jiren was on the offensive, and as he knocked Hit on down to the ground, there was a moment in where Hit struck through the rocks once in trying to catch Jiren, in which Jiren deflected the first attack, but as quickly as he came, we saw how Hit used cross dimensions and getting behind Jiren and finally striking him in the heart. So at that moment, a lot of people thought that that would be it for Jiren, because Hit stated a long time ago, all he needs to do is connect this one singular attack and it's over. So as Jiren got hit by this attack, I would have to say it did a bit more damage than any of Goku's attacks as we saw previous, because as Jiren got hit, he was sent flying all the way across the arena to the point where he was by the edge, and as that happened, the hole that was in his chest suddenly just wasn't there anymore. But just as that happened, we also get to see around Jiren, there's this purple aura that's keeping him locked. So the attack itself was used as a basis to paralyze Jiren, all for it to backfire and fail, and that just goes to show the hack of Jiren, because he was actually able to move his hand in grabbing Hit's attack and later having to crush it right before ringing Hit out. Now, I personally don't like the idea and the concept of Hit having to do the job and Hit having to lose to Jiren, all to make Goku's victory seemingly that much more important as we go on in the tournament, because as of right now, the Daishinkan has declared that we are now officially halfway through the entire tournament, as he also began to change the sky. The sky reminded me personally of the Zamasu story when they were in the future and they battled against Black and Zamasu in the future, with the sky having to be green. So the sky was green, and I don't understand as to why the Daishinkan decided to change the overall atmosphere. However, I disagree with the concept of Hit having to be rung out so early, because you could have marketed and had yourselves some amazing battles involving Hit versus Vegeta, Hit versus Gohan, Hit versus Frieza, Hit versus Topo, Hit versus Goku again. They could have marketed this and had some really incredible fights that would have made this tournament that much more meaningful. And I think, in my opinion, what they should have done is they should have saved this battle for a later cause. And if they wanted to really get Jiren over that much and having him ring out a top tier fighter, they should have at least given us the opportunity in seeing Hit at least fight Vegeta one more time before Jiren stepped in. But instead, I personally felt that this entire thing was rushed, and the idea that Rosie and Ribrianne are still in this tournament running and hiding and complaining and bitching about love and all these nonsensical things that are involved in this tournament-like setting, and yet she's still around. But how come Hit, who is a top tier fan favorite, gets wrung out so damn quickly with absolute no justification or satisfaction to the fandom in having to see a fan favorite go up against other fan favorite characters like Frieza and Vegeta, even fighting Goku one more time? But instead, they decided to feed Hit to Jiren and later having to establish Goku's victory that much more, and I completely disagree with the concept of this direction. You can't sit there and say as a fan that you didn't want to see these fights. I mean, granted, sure, for those who are huge fans of Jiren, maybe it's justified to them in seeing the assassin get wrung out so quickly, but keep in mind, this is the legendary assassin of Universe 6. Practically everybody knows this guy's reputation and his name, and for him to get bodied so quickly, you're telling me that they couldn't have stretched this out for at least one more episode and having them go back and forth? I mean, they literally had Goku versus Jiren in 2 episodes, so I'm sitting here wondering as to why they couldn't do Hit versus Jiren at least twice, considering the fact that based on spoilers, Hit was getting attacked on purpose in trying to study Jiren, in trying to further analyze him as a fighter to figure out his weaknesses, even though in this fight it was clear as day, as Hit even admitted at the very end, he realized that once Jiren broke through the time lock barrier, it was over. There was nothing left that he could have done. However, you're telling me that they're going to completely disregard the overall improvement factor that he has as a fighter? How come Hit was able to get foddered by Goku during the Champa arc, only for him to even later on time skip Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken times 10, but meanwhile here, he wasn't given enough time to even improve enough to hold his own, but instead, by the very end, they reused the exact exact same animation as Jiren used against Kale when firing off the blast and pretty much knocking her out of her form. The same thing happened here in the idea that Jiren used in a force to push Hit back and pretty much neutralizing him via explosion and thus resulting in Hit getting rung out from the tournament. So I understand also one thing that didn't make any sense to me is the idea that once Hit had Jiren locked under the time lock and Kaba, Kale, and Khalifa were there, how come due to plot it wouldn't have been sensical to have Kaba, Khalifa, and Kale attempt to slowly push Jiren out of the ring, considering two things. Number one, he can't move. Number two, he was right near the edge of the ring. So it would have been sensical to have Hit tell Kaba, Kale, and Khalifa to push and knock Jiren off right there as he had him locked, but instead he told them to scurry on away because this is his fight. And I felt as if that's pretty stupid considering the fact that number one, this is universe survival, so you need to do whatever you need to do in order to what? Survive. But instead, Jiren, I think, took the approach to where he was very prideful. He didn't want to do anything to jeopardize that fight to the sense where it was only down to him and Jiren and that's the way he wanted it, and I completely respect that from a fighter standpoint. But if we're talking about your own universe having to be on the line, you would need to do what you have to do in order to assure victory by any means necessary. But instead here, we saw how Jiren broke right through, he grabbed Hit, he beat him up, and I will say in terms of brutality, this was a very brutal fight. From start to finish, there was literally nothing, and I mean nothing, that Hit could have done to avoid the inevitable. And I understand the fact that they're building up Jiren versus Goku one more time. I just personally feel as if it was stupid to ring out Hit right before Ribrianne. So either way, they're actually setting up Ribrianne to be a very important character as we progress on forward in this tournament, which again, I can't see why, because even in this episode, she's fighting Vegeta, and you know, I really wish that Vegeta would have ring her out, because thus far, it looks like those two had a back and forth kind of deal ever since she was introduced. So my question is, how come Vegeta isn't taking her serious enough to the point where he needs to ring her out? So Ribrianne needs to go. However, I will also mention the Universe 6 Namekians. Now, once we saw them, the way they were introduced was very cool because they snuck up behind Goku and they were going to essentially knock Goku out via blasts, but instead, Piccolo and Gohan came to the rescue. I thought that was pretty cool, and initially enough, I thought that maybe we were gonna see the last of these two during this fight, but instead, as they collided, you know, with Gohan and Piccolo, that was the end of that. So we haven't really seen definitively as to what's gonna happen involving those four. Hopefully enough, those Namekians actually put up a good fight with Piccolo, but in all honesty, in my opinion, I personally feel like Piccolo's gonna be way too much for them to handle. However, as good as this episode was, and this was a great episode, I thought there were so many flaws that the writers could have improved to make the tournament that much more sensical, to the standpoint of giving Hit more of a credible run against other fighters while still having Jiren ring him out in the long run. They could have still done that, but instead they're focusing more on the Universe 6 Saiyans now. It's clear as day that Kaba, Kale, and Khalifa are going to be the main focus points in the upcoming episodes. But either way, guys, I want to know your take and your thoughts on this, because as a fan, I truly did enjoy the brutality of Hit using time skip, cross dimensions, even the one neutralization shot to the heart where he thought he neutralized them, but instead it was all to no avail. So I want to know your thoughts on this. I want to know your thoughts as to what you guys thought about Hit being rung out so early by Jiren in one episode. What are your thoughts on the Namekians? What are your overall thoughts at the very end by Jiren having to claim that there's nobody that can rival him, in meditating further and seeing the Universe 3 fighters attempt to attack him? What are your overall thoughts on that? Thank you all so very much for watching. If you guys are new to this channel, don't forget to punch that subscribe button. And of course, if you guys love Dragon Ball, be sure to go on ahead and slap a like down below. Tune back in for more. I mean, for me at least, this episode, it was good, but I felt like the execution was rushed, and I absolutely hate how everything was rushed. And I personally like the idea, the fighting style behind Jiren and Hit, because it felt more like a street fight than anything else, which I can respect. But aside from that, everything else just felt so rushed, and I really am gonna miss Hit because we don't know what the future lies for him. But post your comments down below, guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Take it easy, guys. Peace.